Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Radical Support Circles. Welcome to this conversation about creativity as a spark for social change and personal transformation. My name is Anastasia Shumkis. I'm here with my two co-founders of Radical Support Collective, Seth Bush and Jessica Sarante. And we are delighted you all are here because we have a guest that we love and treasure and co-conspire with, which is Yi Zhang. So you will hear more from them in a minute. I wanted to just introduce Radical Support Collective. We are, Seth, Jess, and I are all longtime climate activists. We've worked on issues of climate, racial, and social justice for over a decade. And our passion for seeing a more just world is exactly why we became coaches and exactly why we founded Radical Support Collective, so that we could give people just invaluable tools and skills to navigate all that we are facing, from the climate crisis to racial inequity to each aspect that's so important to us to see in the world, to navigate that with ease and joy so that we can be creative in our pursuit for a more just world. And we know that that keeps us in this work for the long haul, which is so necessary. So we're delighted to host this Radical Support Circle, which this is our third circle that we're hosting, and we get to just live into some juicy questions. So next slide, please. So the purpose of the Radical Support Circle that you're here on is for us to be together in community and to explore big questions about how we live in such a way that a just and life-sustaining future happens as a result of our lives. I would say if you talk with Yi, myself, Seth, or Jess, we would all point us back to this one piece of truth that we like to hold on to, which is that we are actually built for moments just like these. So that's what we get to tap into today. Let's go to the next slide. Today's question, so we have a big question that we like to ask and explore answers and additional questions to in these circles. Today's topic is, how do we use our creativity to spark social change and personal transformation, even in difficult and uncertain times like the ones we are living in today? So this is what we've invited you to talk with us about. And we like to say that, so I've mentioned that we like big questions here at Radical Support Collective and in these Radical Support Circles. And we feel like really why we're here today is summed up by this quote from Rainer Maria Rilke. So I'll read it out loud for folks on the phone. Be patient toward all that is unsolved in your heart, and try to love the questions themselves, like locked rooms and like books that are now written in a very foreign tongue. Do not now seek the answers, which cannot be given to you, because you would not be able to live them. And the point is to live everything. Live the questions now. Perhaps you will then gradually, without noticing it, live along some distant day into the answer. So today, maybe you'll come up with more questions than answers. That is the point. And we're all doing it together. So we're excited to have this conversation. And so I'm going to have Yi introduce themselves, and then in just a minute, you all will get to just break out into pairs with each other and talk more about what brings you here today. And before we do that, I'm just delighted to welcome a friend and co-conspirator of Radical Support Collectives, Yi Zhang, who's just, I've had the pleasure of living with Yi, of working alongside Yi, of being trained alongside Yi, and I'm excited to be hosting them because our conversations leave me just, it's like both relaxed and invigorated. And the way that you show up with spaciousness, presence, and your just boundless creative spirit, it inspires something in me for my own work. So, Yi, I'm going to ask you just an introductory question that we ask every one of our guests when they come to Radical Support Circles. And we'd love to hear your perspective on this. So my question for you is, who are you? And what possibilities are you seeing in this moment that has you wake up and do your work every day? And then I'd love for you to speak a little bit to your question, why you chose your question of the day, which is how do we use our creativity to spark social change and personal transformation in difficult and uncertain times?
Thank you, Anastasia, for the lovely introduction and also the very juicy set of questions. It's a delight to be here with you all, and especially Radical Support Collective. I think one of the great things is seeing the way that you creatively do your work, and even coming up with the circles of how do we hold space for questions when so many of the other things around us are information to help us get to answers, get to the next strategy. When I really revel in the space to dig deeper at what is the underlying question. And I think that's part of what the creativity opens up for us, I think. And, something that I'm excited for waking up every day and being here is what I'm starting to call the gentle what if that creativity opens. And it's a, what if things could be, fill in the blank, and that could be on a personal level, that could be on a societal level, could be with your team, how might we? And so that's something that I'm excited about and looking forward to diving more into. And that's part of what's fueling the question as well, creativity in this time. And I do feel like there is a very close link between how we treat ourselves, how we change ourselves, and how we treat others and the world that we're wanting to help shepherd towards. And so it's also that gentle what if, if I were able to be more fully myself, if I were able to hold that space for myself, what might it be like for the people in my presence who maybe have different opinions than me, who maybe I don't know as well, that we haven't found the creative solution to be in the space together, to move in the same direction together. So I hold those two sides very closely in how I live and how I work. And so looking forward to this conversation, not only to share what I'm doing, but also to hear from others in this conversation. I'm sure there's something that brought you here that you're thinking about this question. I'm sure that's already shown up in your life in some ways as well. I'm gonna pause there.
Yes. I love this, just like a teaser into the conversation that's coming. I'm delighted to live into the what ifs, and I'm just so grateful that we all get to be here this morning looking at that together. So,
well, I'm thinking maybe it might be fun to share a little image as a what if.
Sure.
And this is something that came to me as I was just spending some time with myself thinking about questions and possibilities. So this is just, I like to make prints of things, just roll some ink around, and then it makes a little bit of a messy background, and then it's fun to write phrases on top of them. So this one says, healing equals re-membering our wholeness. And it was kind of a invitation to myself to think, what is, you know, we talk about there being a lot of trauma, and what does healing look like? And when trauma isn't healed, it gets perpetuated. And so what does that look like? And it's been thinking about what already exists within us. What are the things that, instead of finding new, that we can uncover already? Instead of looking for how do we fix this, we just remember what we already knew, and invite the different parts of ourselves to come back together into wholeness. Invite the different parts of our communities, of our team members, of our families, remembering them into wholeness. And so that's one of the what ifs that I've been dancing with, and one of the ways visually that I've been dancing with that as well.
So for folks on the phone, Yi described the image. The text says healing equals remembering our wholeness, but it's black font on a beautiful turquoise and gold background. And I've seen this image a couple of times, just chatting with Yi the last few weeks. And today is actually the first time I'm reading remembering how you've got it written, which is re-member-ing. And I'm just seeing the member piece of that. It's just like being a member of something. It's really sweet. Thanks for sharing this with us. So I think that is just a perfect segue, if I can create it into one, for folks reflecting on what they came here to get from our conversation today. So what we're going to do next is have each of you break out into pairs. So you're going to talk with a buddy briefly about what you'd love to get from being here today. And when you come back, we'll jump right into our conversation with Yi for just a little bit. And then along the way, we'll invite your reflections, but we will certainly open up the entire dialogue to all of us after hearing a bit more in depth from Yi. So that's what you can expect from our time together today. And I invite you to now just jump off of Yi's vulnerability here, and already just juicy introduction to talk with your buddy. I'd love to hear from just a couple of folks, Elizabeth, Sarah, Stephanie, Alex. If one or two of you would like to come off mute and share, what is it that you're here to get out of today?
Sure. For me, I think I really agree with some of what Stephanie said as far as like finding certain, like leaning into co-conspiring with others around creativity that leads healing, and really feel that like this year has been like really great for like intuitive artistic healing, where like other healing has been hard to find, but personally also really like looking forward to being in a space where I think that everyone approaches things with a really like trauma informed mind, and like understand where a lot of each other are coming from in regards to this kind of work in the world we want to build.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Glad you're here. Let's hear from one other person. What are you here to get today?
I can speak. I anticipate being renewed and inspired, as I always am in the presence of Yi. I anticipate having my, very briefly, my inner self, my core, heard, and so that it can be affirmed and accompany my outer self, which are the roles that I play in this world, because if they don't dance together, it doesn't work.
Yeah. Well said, Elizabeth. Thank you. Yeah. So today is about that inner self and yeah, dancing with it for the sake of our world, nourishing it for the sake of our world. So I'm excited now to transition to just doing a small deep dive with you, Yi. And I want to start off by just restating the question, the topic that we're all here for, which is how do we use our creativity to spark social change and personal transformation, so hand in hand, even in difficult and uncertain times. I was just saying to Yi during the breakout, excuse me, it's vulnerable for me to have a conversation about creativity. It's nerve-wracking because I, for a long time, have held creativity as like outside of me or something that's not mine. Like, I'm not a visual artist, I'm not a musician. So what right do I have to talk about creativity in my like activism or in my coaching? But working with Yi and us being in the same coaching model for several years has shown me creativity is innate. So I'd love for you to start by just talking about this energy of creativity that does live inside of all of us, how universal that is, and the importance of it.
Thank you for that invitation. It is innate. It's what we're born with, and not only for humans, but if you look at the natural world, every inclination is to create, towards creation. That moves through a cycle where it becomes something else, whether leaves fall and they disintegrate, but there is a drive to continue creating. And so that's part of the remembering too. The creativity, it's a part of us, and maybe it's something that growing up or in the getting the right answers for tests kind of mindset has trained it to be far away from us. Welcoming it back, it's already there. It's not something that that only certain people have, or just talented people who do certain things can access it. And that's something I'm really excited about, actually, that it is already within us. And a lot of times when we do creative things, even if it's repurposing leftovers for a meal, there's a sense of joy that we can tap into. And in these days when it's so easy to get, to turn on the news or to doom scroll, that small moment, we can connect to something within us that brings us joy. I just find so valuable, and it doesn't need to cost more time or money, So I'm going to pause there. There's lots to say later for that. Just start with that for now.
I feel like you're already tapping into the what if that you started off introducing. The like the little things and the big things that can open when we tap into or remember our wholeness. Remember that being creative is part of us being whole. It's like, oh, I can relax. I don't have to try so hard, just be creative. Would you
I
share?
guess, sorry, the other thing I want to say, no, give your question and then I'll say my other thing along with the question. Go ahead.
Well, I was thinking, you know, you and I have been talking a lot about the different projects you've been pursuing during the pandemic, and how you've been tapping into your own creativity to support you through what are very difficult times for many people right now. So how have you been tapping into your own creativity, or how have you seen others tapping into creativity to it's like be a witness to the difficulty in ourselves right now?
Yeah, I'm happy to share about that. And the thing that I wanted to add on earlier was about our innate creative energy, that all of us have a desire to create something. And in small moments, it looks like perhaps the most thing that we think of is something like an artistic type of output. But it's also the projects that we're a part of, the movements that we're a part of, the families that we create, the friendships that we have. And so that's a desire to create as well. And when we start shutting off our creativity, or when we don't give as much attention to it because we're being pressured to be busy, you know, not only does some of the you know, our artistic kind of types of creativity start to show up less in our lives, but also our desire to create the better future, or the type of relationships that we want, the new ways to think about teams and organizations, like that desire starts to suffer as well. And so there's a real, I'm starting to see more and more, particularly through this time of pandemic, how those things are connected. And I'll just share some of the things I've been exploring. So, you know, one of the things was everybody is starting to be at home, work from home, and also I used to travel a lot for work, and being at home was like, well, I'd like to think about how I'm eating and treating my body, and how do I bring some kind of make things that I want to eat that are healthy and that aren't the same thing every night. So I started to just play with it a little bit, that kind of what if, right? What if it could be fun for me to pick out dinner and to create it? So I'm going to show you a little, this thing is going to fall off, but here's just this little whiteboard that I got. And I ended up printing out tiny little pictures of the things I might want to eat. And I have a stack here. I literally have a stack of small little pictures of like foods off of Pinterest. And I just labeled them with the type of food. And so, you know, if I'm meal planning for the week, I'll just look through and like, oh, well, you know, this Chinese dish with mushrooms looks kind of good this week. I'll put it on my board. And then when I'm looking at what I want to cook for the week, I can just look at this. It's got, you know, the nine pictures of things that I might want to eat on it. And I'll say kale sausage soup looks good today, which is, you know, a picture here on the bottom middle. And I'm like, okay, let's do that one. And so, you know, I was just starting to bring some kind of creative energy into like my daily, how do I support myself to be resourced, to have a healthy foundation? And how do I do that without necessarily like drudgery? I gotta eat healthy, you know, and the same thing with exercise, same thing with, you know, just my life. So that's like the foundation that I'm working out of any projects that I'm doing. And then in terms of kind of more on the social justice side of things, right, I think maybe just speak to very recently, I started doing some, you know, get out the vote postcard writing. And I'm going to share my screen here. So here are some postcards that I wrote for Turn PA Blue, and it's essentially, you know, copying a script, right? And part of the script says, pass this message on to 3 friends. This is a little evolution. There's maybe, I don't know, 6 or 7 postcards on here. And it's the evolution of me playing with the what if in just copying 50 postcards. The first one on the top left, it's just, I was like, well, I could write in a different colored pen. That's about as creative as I'm going to be to start with. And I was like, no, it doesn't look that great. Like, my handwriting's not that great. And then so I was like, well, you know, I think, what can I do such that someone receiving this might actually want to pass it on to 3 friends? And so, you know, I started playing with writing people's names kind of in a more cursive font or in like a block letters. And I was like, well, it's not that easy to read. So can I add in a different color? So there's some of these have like, I realized one of them had the website, votespa.com in orange, and like make a plan to vote in red. And I was like, yeah, that orange doesn't look very good. And, you know, and it just started playing with the different structures. And I was like engaging my creativity in the process. And it made writing the 50 postcards go by way faster. And I might not even have finished the postcards had I not kind of been playing, you know, in this process. And ended up just sent out, I think, 70, 80 postcards for Sunrise the other day, and did some more letters for Vote Forward, and, you know, just actually had invited my coworkers and friends to have like a writing party with me. And it was like one of the best times we had, just hanging out, because we were just doing things with our hands and showing each other like the types of things we were trying to do in our own styles to make the messages that we're sending to people something like joyful to receive. Like, we get so much spam. You know, what would it be like to receive something that people took the time to do and like made, you know, carries some of that, like we care about you, which is why I want your voice to be heard in this election. You know, it's not just like winning points for a side. It's like, I really want to invite you to engage and participate in this, you know, in thinking about how this country moves forward. So those are a couple of things in the stuff I've done. And I guess the other piece about what if is at a bit more fundamental level for me. I've been working in education, in facilitation for the last 8 years, doing programs for changemakers and teaching about different frameworks and skills and tools. And I've assumed that my life and work will look like being in front of a computer. And that will be how it works, because aren't jobs all like that? And with the pandemic, we had to cancel all our programs because they were all in person. And so it gave me that space to ask that what if a little bit more loudly. And to say, well, what if my work looked differently? You know, what if how I approached working looked differently? And so, you know, my work situation has changed a lot since that time. In addition to moving all online, you know, I've also just explored what is it like for me to have spaciousness, to keep asking some of the questions, because at this moment in time, we don't really know the answers. To some of the bigger questions, and what would it be like to actually sit with the questions a little bit longer? So I've just been dancing a little bit with that. I'll pause there again, turn it back to you, Anastasia.
Yeah, well, something that's very clear to me, and I think to everyone listening to this, you know, you're using the word joy. You're saying, this is bringing me joy. This is hopefully like creating joy for others to receive. You know, for example, in an election cycle, that they get these really beautiful handwritten postcards that someone's obviously put time and care into. But what's striking me is your voice is full of joy. You're not just like recapping it and be like, this was like an intellectual experience, but as you talk with us, your voice is so full of lightness and energy. So this really, whether it's meal planning or, you know, GOTVing with your like marker pens, like you're embodying right now the nourishment that you mentioned earlier. Like being creative is nourishing. And I know in myself or when I'm working with my clients, we're constantly looking at how can things be more nourishing? How can we do our necessary work for justice in whatever capacity we are? Maybe we're addressing the climate crisis. Maybe we're addressing racial inequity. How do we go about it in a way that's nourishing? And that's what I'm getting right now from you, is like you are just embodying nourishment. Something else that you and I have talked about is that I'm making a connection to this in my brain is creativity is not necessarily encouraged or unleashed in our mainstream society. It's not necessarily even always nurtured and unleashed inside of social change movements. I think it's something that some pockets of social change movements there's like a remembering, to use your word, that has to happen for us to be creative in our pursuits. I guess, would you just talk about, what can creativity unleash? Why is being creative strategic, actually? You know, why be creative and do things in a nourishing way? And then I think after this, you will go into more of the group discussion. So I'm loving seeing comments in the chat box. Please keep those up because we'll want to pull in more voices here in a second. But
yeah, creativity as a strategy. And, you know, part of it goes back to the what if, and, you know, I'm starting to think about, you know, looking at our group who's here, right? You know, for all of you who are here, and starting to kind of wonder what are the what ifs that you might be dancing with, or that you might be thinking about as we are continuing this conversation. And I hold a lot of what ifs at work and in creating organizations and teams that can be supportive of each other, support each other 100%, and don't leave people out. And so a lot of that, the current structure don't necessarily support that desire or that goal. And one of the things that's been really exciting for me over the last few months is, again, taking enough space to step back and ask the what if. So for example, now I work more in contractually. So before I've run a number of programs where I've like managed budgets, and we've hired people to like run workshops and things like that. And you know, it goes for like guest speakers and all of these things. And we often hear about the pay gap. You know, like certain people get paid more kind of by default, and we all kind of know this is a thing that happens. And then I was looking at how we make those payments. Like, how does that happen? Because many people are not going out and saying, today I'm gonna, you know, pay discriminate against someone. Like, that's gonna just make my day. And then I was looking at the budgets, and it's like, well, often we ask guest speakers or people who run workshops and things like that, how much do you charge? And then certain people who have been used to getting paid some certain amount of money or feel very confident to be paid a certain amount of money say, this is my rate. And other people who feel like they might not get that much or kind of, they're like, oh, maybe this is my rate. And then we were like, well, we asked fair and square. They said that was their rate, so we pay them. And at the end of the day, if you look over the budget, guess which kind of people get paid the big bucks, right? And so, and then I started being the one people asked, like, how much should we pay you? And I was like, well, what if I didn't have to be the one guessing, am I overcharging? Because I want your movement to, like, I don't want to take extra resources that I think could really go towards the movement that you're supporting. And I don't want to feel like I'm getting ripped off, and so, like, is there a better way to have that conversation? And so part of that has been, can we talk about this together? What does your budget look like? Can we be more honest about this? What is an amount that would, like, be comfortable for you and they're reasonable for me? Like, let's really work together. So that's changed a number of basically money negotiation conversations I've had, and also how we pay others. And so these, like, what ifs are showing up in these kind of, like, also intellectual property, in a contract, like who owns what at the end of developing some educational material, or, like, the strategies for doing something, right? It's very easy in sort of social movements and nonprofits to feel like, well, we're all nice people. We definitely won't, it doesn't matter. Why would we talk about things like intellectual property? And then at the end of the day, because our organizational structures and our legal structures, like, that ends up mattering. And so it's like, what if we could have a process where people are, like, cared for in that at the end of the day? If we do decide to go our separate ways, if this does become wildly successful, makes tons of money and reaches millions of people, like, what does that look like to still be cared for in that process? And so it's these small questions of the what if showing up in teams and organizations and processes, in hiring. Like, I'm a part of this great foundation board, and we're thinking about, like, does leadership always need to rest in this one position? Does it always need to look like this? Do we need to always have an executive director for an organization in order for a small nonprofit to grow? So, like, it's these what ifs that I dance with, that my daily life, meal planning and like journaling and arting, like, that's what it's fueling. So, a lot of people think about, I don't have time for hobbies. Like, especially because everything is burning, and literally in California, and also figuratively, and how can I set time aside to, like, watercolor or, go to the garden or something like that. It's very unstrategic in that, or even rest. And, hi, Eugene. And so when we talk about strategic, it's like, that's the thing that's fueling us, that reconnects us to our innate creative power, like, not just our innate skills to draw. It's like, that's the faucet that you turn on. And each time you do something creative, whether it's in repurposing or in having a great celebration for a friend, writing a get out the vote postcard in a creative way, like, you turn that faucet a little bit more on, and that creative flow, you choose where to point that hose, but if you have nothing running out of that hose, like, that's feeling drained, right? You're drained. There's nothing left, drained. And that's when you feel exhausted. So our daily practices of creativity, it takes those small steps. And the great news, it's small steps in your daily life and in the conversations you have with teams, in the decisions that you're making day to day in your movements. Those are the gestures of opening up the faucet so that creative flow, which wants to flow, can come out, and then water the whole garden of all the movements, right? I'm gonna pause there.
Yes. This last piece that you said, innate creative power being our faucet, or, like, fueling us. And I'd never considered before when I use the word drained. I'm drained for being exhausted. I never thought about that in actual, like, like water context, if I'm draining a bathtub, or, you know, ecologically speaking, if we're renegotiating water pathways, whether we should or not, in our cities, or you know, on our public lands, quote, yeah, to be drained. What an image comes to mind when I actually consider what that word means in physicality. This is really juicy. Thank you. I'd love to pull in other folks here and just hear, what are you getting for yourself? What insights does this spark for you? Or are there questions that have sparked for you? And yeah, feel free to come off mute and share what you're getting so far.
I think Alex had mentioned what a great question on process to determine pay, which I was like, yeah, why don't more of us just talk about money in that way? Like, am I the only person who thought of this? Like, I can't be the only person who thought of this.
Yeah. Something I appreciated in that was money is a hard topic to talk about. There's a lot of hard topics to talk about right now. What if we could have those conversations in a more caring way?
Well, with that, I actually would love to share something. So one of the responses in June, I'm going to screen share this. So, and this is part of the proceeds for today, going to redeem the 10 virtual visual, and people might be like, what the heck is that? So this, in terms of how do we hold spaces to engage with difficult topics, and you know, one of the things that this circle format is opening up is sitting with the question, right? And I think the Redeem the 10 virtual visual has been a group of people who are bringing creativity and contemplation to thinking about race. And so this is, we did a 10-week series, each week addressing a different word. So this is week 3. The title of the word was correct, and like correcting, or so this ended up being really, I was invited to be a guest live artist, which is new for me. So I'm not gonna actually play this because you might not hear the title of it, but I just wanted to scroll through a couple of points here. So these were like an hour, 15-minute conversations, inviting different members, not just of the Black community, but people who had something to share about the topic, and to be in conversation and in contemplation, and to imagine to help see and share and truly be with what is. Because even that is not easy, actually, just to truly see what is happening and to see it from different angles, because it's not just a tweet, it's not just one headline, it's different voices in different formats. And so each week there was also a different creative. So Letty here actually wrote a contemplative poem for each week that captured the spirit, and we were led into, you know, just a moment for contemplation. How do we think deeper? And on the left of the screen here, I have Yi's art cam, my first time doing live art, and just, you know, using watercolors, kind of writing down some of the words that Letty is speaking in the contemplation. And then each time we had a guest speaker, and here Michael Maxwell, a photographer and a humanitarian, and also works a lot with people facing trauma, and he talked about correction and believing in second chances, and what it was like to work with people that others had considered, the people who were maybe had inflicted abuse on other people, or who he works with and sees the possibility of restoration and remembering to wholeness, and others might cast off, right, in the and give up on, and what does correction mean in that context. And so he also shares a number of his photographs of being at a protest, and even with people, he's a Black man, but he at a protest, as a photographer, he actually had a really interesting conversation with someone wearing a kind of, very like loudly Confederate gear. And as a photographer, just came up to him and said, I'd love to take your picture. And like, I'd love to, and they had a great conversation, because of the spaciousness of the, what if I could just take your picture, not be in what one would assume to be a division. And so there was a lot of openness in these dialogues that were held in all of these different media. There was a dancer who came. There was I think someone who worked with herbs as part of being a creative and expressing what healing looks like. So it was really a rich experience, and that was part of the Redeem the 10 virtual vigil. And what does a vigil look like? Literally, we started and we thought we were going to spend 24 hours online being in vigil, after George Floyd's killing. And we were like, well, wait, that's draining. Yes, that's a great thing to do, and maybe we, sacrifice and just be in vigil, but like, what if we could do something that's healing, that could bring people together, that could spark something? And so it ended up being a 10-week series that we're now actually rewatching as a team, and we're still getting more out of it. We're like, these are rich topics that we can keep chewing on, So spaces for deepening those conversations. They don't just have to be hard. We can come out of these revitalized, so.
Thank you. Thank you. So yeah, let's hear from a few folks. What does this spark for you? Whether it's about creativity and having hard conversations, creativity as strategy, as nourishment. Just what are you seeing for yourself? I'd love to hear from a couple of folks.
I'd love to chime in briefly if I may, actually, because we had somebody on the Facebook Live that I have pulled up, Matt Bralo, I hope I'm saying their name right, asking this question of why can't we use our creativity to get more people to participate in our calls to action and to create positive change? And I'm seeing what Matt has put here and hearing what Yi is saying here and thinking, well, what if even our phone banking conversations could be done in a way that is not draining, done in a way that is creative, that is enlivening, that is life-giving, so that, and I've been actually really grateful in this election cycle to be on some of these kind of phone banking interactions for Get Out the Vote in a way that has left me at the end of the 3-hour shift feeling more energized than when I started. So I know there are ways to do that. And I'm just really appreciating, Yi, how you're talking about this. We can take some of the strategies and tactics that have become kind of rote, like making phone calls or sending texts or even writing letters like you're doing, and just ask the question, what if this could be satisfying, fulfilling, energizing? What might that look like if we were to do this differently? And I just love that shift in what if from, it's taking it from despair. I'm used to like, well, what if bad things happen? What if this is boring? And the shift here is from that to what if possibility. And that's really what I'm taking out and what I'm seeing in context to what Matt has shared about on Facebook as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Speaking to the strategy there, the power and strategy in being creative. Great. Let's hear from a couple other folks. What are you getting? What are you seeing?
Well, I'll speak up. It's sort of like fireworks going off at the same time for me. So I'm not quite sure which spark I hold on to at this point, because there's so many wonderful ones. But what comes up, and this is kind of a splatter response on my part. One is what Yi lifted up, which is a different model of leadership. I go back to her discussion of shared discussions on salary, but just getting rid of the word salary, shared discussions, whose voices count? How do we have the circle model be a model for leadership as opposed to the pyramid? And that takes me into the whole sense of what is a circle, and the ways in which Yi is talking about circles and their importance, and the way all of you are talking about circles. And I am taken back to, and I'm sure most of you have never heard of him, but now deceased, wonderful Roman Catholic Dutch, priest, who wrote a book years ago called Reaching Out, in which he talks about hospitality. And at the heart of hospitality is to create a safe place where people can sing their song, dance their dance, and tell their story. It's not a place where we convert, where we preach. It's not about what we are stuffing down other people because we think we're important. It's about story. And that's what I'm hearing a lot today, is which stories are counting and how can we lift them up? And that's what I heard, Seth talking about in terms of what he got out of that 3 hours of the phone bank. And I bet it was hearing someone else's story. I bet it was not Seth doing the fire hose bit. So that's sort of what I'm getting out. And I'm also getting out there on the side, and Alex and I talked about it, about having the courage to be the fly in the ointment, having the courage to push against with a different vision. And that's what we're hearing from Yi, is that creativity is a different vision. And what I hear is that some of us, which you talked about first, is that let us redefine an art. Let us not limit it to visual art. Let us see that art is that which is the spark from our inner self. Now I'll shut up.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Oh, yes. Your passion is contagious.
Well, wherever I taught, if the word passion came along, they'd say, "Where's Elizabeth?" And some of them would say, "Oh, there's Elizabeth." It depended who I was threatening.
So great. The word hospitality is so poignant. Creativity is hospitality, hospitality as creativity. How can we bring hospitality to grappling with our own pain for the world? How can we bring hospitality to having a difficult conversation with someone? Yeah, thank you.
Say, difficult conversation, right? What if we were having a conversation?
Yeah, right.
Someone?
Yes, that I even need to label it as difficult. Yeah, absolutely. Then I'm bracing for the difficulty. This is going to be so hard. Yeah. This is great. This is so great. I'd love to give you all just a chance to share more with each other, about what you're taking away. So how about we just take a minute of just quiet reflection. I'd love for each of you to consider, what did I get here today? And even, is there a small creative action I'd enjoy taking this week, so that you can translate our insights into action in your life? So just take a minute and reflect on, what did you get from today? And please share it in the chat, and then I'll of course invite some of you to come off mute and share too, but just reflect and share in the chat with what you're taking away and a small creative action you might take. This is great. Thank you, Sarah and Eugene, for sharing some of your thoughts. Please keep sharing your thoughts in the chat. And Eugene, would you be willing to come off mute and just share a little bit about what was impactful for you about seeing the virtual vigil and anything else you got from this conversation?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I apologize for jumping on late. I loved the draining versus filling intention, and hearing about the shift from going from the 24-hour, like literally a vigil, like what we think about, to something that was creative and generative. And it was super cool, like the art cam, like seeing how that was integrated. But also hearing about Michael Maxwell's work, hearing about the poet, like how that was integrated. I mean, I definitely want to watch those videos and just actually see that in action. That was really inspiring to see.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. Yeah. Alex puts in the chat, I loved what Elizabeth said about hospitality and hearing others' stories rather than converting. Alex, would you, are you able to come off mute and just share a little bit about what you're seeing there?
Yeah. Give me a sec here. Yeah, I guess just a big theme here today has been having conversations. Like how do we open up pay as a conversation as opposed to like an argument or a either or. Yeah, how do we, I guess I've had some experiences recently that feel really nourishing, to realize like we don't have to agree. And what is it, you know, like I think there are different spaces. It's one thing to create a space where it's like we need to find a way to do this thing together, or I don't know, whatever the constraints of the situation are, but to also have spaces where it's like, can we just listen to each other and not need that to be anything? Like not need anything to happen from that. But yeah, that idea of each individually also being clear about what we need and finding a way to communicate that so we can fulfill our own needs and also help each other fulfill our needs.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here. Yeah, I know, Eugene. So Stephanie, you're on the phone. You can't see that Alex is walking in the woods as she's listening in. So we got to see the woods behind her for a minute. It's beautiful.
Sounds lovely. And thanks so much for even thinking about describing to me on the phone what's going on. I really just feel moved by that. So thank you.
Absolutely. Stephanie, while you're off mute, is there anything you'd like to share about what you're taking away from this conversation?
Well, you know, one of the things I'd hoped to get from it was inspiration, and to feel in a sort of at least an experience of being in community around creativity. And I'm so inspired by the stories and all the subtle ways to employ creativity. And I love also just the notion that if we don't tend to creativity as an energy, that can actually diminish a little bit. So I'm just energized. Thank you. Thank you all.
Yeah. If we don't tend to creativity as an energy, it can diminish. Yeah. Well, thank goodness creativity is an innate energy. So it is always there for us to return to.
One last comment. I really appreciated your observation about the quality of when Yi was speaking, because there was this contagious joy. And so I loved drawing attention to that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. So let's just hear from one more person. Sarah, if I can ask you to come off mute if you're willing, just to get your voice in the space. You said it's a delight to be in this space. I'd love to hear what's been valuable for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I really value like the centering in creativity, even down to just seeing like the different creative things that you have in your backgrounds that you surround yourselves with, which Stephanie, you're missing out. Yeah, there's like I wrote in the chat about that, like trying to like release that guilt that we carry around like being able to make time to be creative. As well as that asking to like being able to have conversations around having our labor be valued. And so I feel really grateful because I just started working for an organization that like sent this like list of questions that you just ask yourselves to like orient around like what your relationship is with money and what your needs are, and then it's a range, and then you choose and no one debates you on it, and you just get what you need. So yeah, it was hard because I was the only one standing in my way. I was like, no, I don't deserve that. Like, I should still struggle. But yeah, so it kind of brings me like what I'm hearing and taking away from a lot of this is that like this like need to like believe both in like these thoughts and principles that I have and the words that other people are saying, both around like that valuing any type of like regeneration from creativity to just like having the ability to meet your needs. And like believing, because I'll say all the time, like to other people that they should make this time and space to be creative and do what they need to do to fill their cup. But I'm like, no, but I shouldn't. I don't deserve that. Is like always where I get at. So now I have like these Carolina Reaper peppers that I'm like growing in my room, and like practicing my instrument, and yeah, finding these outlets, and yeah, just really like giving myself like time and space to like do that. And so this whole conversation today just really emphasizes that for me, and especially in moments where like that labor of creation feels really draining, and that it feels like more work at the end of my work day or in the middle, to the point where like I don't feel like I have the energy for it, and just needing to like seek that time to do that, not just at like low moments where it's like an act of like desperation, but also just like in those high times especially. And then yeah, that's those are kind of like the thoughts and I'm feeling right now.
Thank you. Yes. All right. If there's like one theme I'm hearing from each of your insights is being creative is a choice. It is innate and it's a choice, and we can choose that and put our attention on that rather than like despair, difficulty, drain. So I'm really just loving each of your insights for pointing out this power of choice that we have in being creative. So thank you, Yi, for joining us and sparking this really nourishing and necessary conversation. We're gonna move into just sharing about a few opportunities for you to keep engaging with your energy of creativity and with Yi, with Radical Support Collective. As we do that, please share in the chat anything that interests you, as well as an action you might want to take coming away from today to implement your learning. So I think with that, Seth, if you'd put up the slides and take it away.
Yeah, thank you all for just being part of this conversation. One of the big things that I'm thinking about as we're talking about this, and I just love the framing of what if, is I tend to find myself very often running from like one fire to another, kind of in crisis mode, especially in this moment with an election coming up. It's just really easy to be in the work, but not necessarily taking the space for creativity that is, I know, is important to be filled up, right? And so the question then becomes, well, what if our work could look like doing what's important to us while having a sort of presence that allows us to be very collected with people, to be very strategic with people, to be very compassionate with other people, as opposed to just running from thing to thing. And that's what I love talking about with people in our In It for the Long Haul coaching group that is starting actually just a week after the election. So it's coming up in almost 2 weeks here. Bringing 6 change leaders together to talk about some skills, get some fortitude to be able to approach our work with that skill set that creativity really is, and skill set of compassion, and skill set of just clarity about what's really important, so that we can do the work that's really meaningful to us and do it in a way that we can keep going even when things get tough. And so if you're interested in getting some of that skill set, would love to play with you in this coaching group so you can bring some real world scenarios that you're experiencing to a community of support and realize you're not alone, and get some skills to keep going. So that's In It for the Long Haul, and we'll share some more about that in our follow-up email.
And to build on what Seth was saying, like, something that's been really striking me in this conversation today is creativity as a practice for opening ourselves up to the possibilities that exist for us in our lives, and the way that we can experience and enjoy our lives and make the impact that we're here to make. And that is ultimately what we are up to in our one-on-one coaching work. And so we want to invite you all to, if you're interested in exploring the possibility of working with one of us, and that is all 4 of us, Seth, Anastasia, myself, and also Yi, I believe, is also taking, working with clients, one-on-one clients right now. We would love to have a conversation with you about what that might look like, and identify what are those creative areas in your life that you'd like to be opening up and stepping further into in your life. Yi, do you want to say anything about coaching with you?
Yeah, I would. So a lot of the theme today has been the what if, and I like to particularly frame it as the gentle what if. As Seth said in the beginning, it can be also, one can also what if about all the things that are bad that could happen, or all the things that are so great that would never be possible. And dance with the gentle what if. And one of the what ifs I'd like to leave you with is what, and to consider, what might your life look like if you were supported by the full power of your creativity. And this is something that I'm focusing on in my coaching work, is rekindling the creative fire that you already have. Again, the part of you that already is there. And part of that is, how to go from maybe being even burnt out to being lit up. And we talked a little bit today about reconnecting with our joy, exploring and reconnecting with what brings us joy, so that the time we do spend with our creativity doesn't become another thing on the to-do list. I gotta have my mindness, I got mindfulness, and then I gotta exercise, and then I gotta eat well, and then I gotta do creativity, right? Like it's just another thing on the to-do list. How might we reconnect with our joy in that process? How do we cultivate our creative habit that can be part of opening that faucet for that flow that rewards us with enjoyment, energy, and possibility, and the habit that you just can't wait to get back to each time. And then as that flow increases, how do we let that creative energy power our dreams and our movements? So that's something that we explore together. And then being creativity in the coaching. So I welcome bringing other formats into our time together, whether you, I do a lot of coaching with people taking walks in the woods, actually. It doesn't have to be like you staring at a screen. And also, might there be some different objects, or, if you like working, if you do like visual arts and making things with your hands, what might that look like inside a session to like make something that embodies what you feel like or explains the situation that you're facing. So I do a lot of that with my workshop work, and I thought, why not combine it with coaching? So, if you're thinking about getting some support in opening up the faucet of your creativity and to have fun while you're doing it, that's something that's just my jam. And I'd be delighted to dance with you. So a little bit about that.
I'm enrolled. I want to work with you, Yi. It sounds like so much fun. So, okay, y'all. So, we all know we've got about a week and a half left until the election. And so we just wanted to point you towards some resources that we have that are available for folks to support you in this last 10 or whatever days, I don't know exactly how many days we have before election day. And so you can go to radicalsupport.org/GOTV. If you're looking for things to do and you want to be supporting a progressive Biden-Harris victory, we've got a lot of stuff there for you to phone bank, text bank, places to send money, ways to be taking action to protect democracy. There's some really great organizations that are doing that work. So that's all there. And if you need a boost of support to figure out exactly what that looks like for you, we've got ourselves as well as I think somewhere like 9 other coaches. There's a whole bunch of us at this website, radicalsupport.org/election, where we're offering free 30-minute coaching. We're just going to get right down to business with you, take a look at what does it look like for you to be throwing your weight behind this victory in these last few days, to make sure that you have a really clear plan for taking action exactly the way you want to be. So you can take us up on those free sessions, radicalsupport.org/election. And there's actually one last thing on this that's not on this slide that I want to share with you. If you are not yet following Radical Support Collective on Instagram, I want to invite you to open up your phone real quick and follow us. We're at Radical Support Collective. We're running a Instagram challenge right now with the hashtag Hope in Action, and posing questions every single day, asking folks to put their attention on the things that bring them joy, the things that nourish them, their inspiring vision for the future. And we're having some really sweet conversation on there. So please follow us and join in the conversation on Instagram. Okay. And donations. So some of you have donated already. If you have not, or you would like to give more, we value this program at $50, and any amount that you can give would help us keep it going. So 25% of the donations are going to go to Yi and to Redeem the 10, the vigil that organization that they had talked about before. And the rest of it will go to Radical Support Collective to support us to keep this offering going into the future, which will be announcing some new dates and new guests soon. And you'll see there's Venmo and PayPal information there. And then nearly last, not quite last, we love feedback. This is a program that is relatively new. We are having so much fun with it, and we want to continue to engage our creativity, to continue to evolve it and make it an even more effective, supportive space, or to hear what we're doing that's really working for you. So please, if you would, right now, pull up this link. That's going to put it in the chat so you can click it open, and that way you can just take 1 minute, 2 minutes, as soon as we're done here, to shoot us a line, let us know how things are going. Your feedback is invaluable to us. And lastly, at all of our Radical Support Collective programs, we have a very sweet tradition, or we think it's very sweet, which is why we do it, of wrapping up our programs with some wise words or poetry. And so we've invited Yi to close us out today with a poem of their choosing. So I'm going to pass it on to Yi to wrap us up.
I did a gentle what-ifing on that. I do love the poetry. Elizabeth especially has inspired me a lot in the poetic realm. I'm going to share something slightly different as I close. I just wanted to offer something to us as we, for contemplation, as we move from the circle and into your lives, that creativity is great and it's strategic and it's nourishing. And how do we not make it a chore? And so I just have a small, sweet step that you can consider. And it's to start with the wins, and it's to celebrate. What are the things that you're already doing to foster your creativity? And it could even be what you have set up for such that you can take time for creativity later. And I did something, this is a little notebook I made just by folding a piece of paper in four pieces. And this is healthy wins. And so this is when I was starting to think about taking time for my physical vitality. And I was like, I'm not even ready to exercise. I'm not ready to eat well yet. I'm not ready for any of those things. But I am ready to see, have I done anything for my body or my health this week? And that was it. So, you know, even if this week looked like you're not ready to take out any paints or go on a walk or, you know, have any conversations about pay or any of those things, what might be creative wins for you already? And what might be a way for you to just document that? And I did that in this little booklet. I had some watercolors, but I wrote. I just wrote. You know, my win was that I journaled and I had fiber, and then I wrote about what that was. You know, and that was one of the days of the 7 days. And this is I did a fast for dinner, and you know I wrote a bunch of stuff. So it's not something, you know, make this easeful on yourself, but what might be some creative wins for you already in your own life as you go off into this week. So that is the whole question I'd like to leave you all with.
Perfect. I love it, Yi. Thank you. All right. So with that, my friends, it was such a gift to be here in this space with you. And we hope you'll stay in conversation with us on our email list and our Instagram. And we'll send you a follow-up email very soon with the links that were shared today, ways to stay in touch with us and with Yi. And we will see you soon.